Thanks for joining us. You've tuned into Arirang's Within the Frame. I'm Han Da-eun in Seoul. With financial damage caused by the liquidity crisis of e-commerce platforms, TMON and WeMakePrice expected to reach over 1 trillion won, or roughly $730 million, the government has rolled up its sleeves to support affected businesses and enforce new rules to prevent similar crises. As the investigation continues by the prosecution into payment delays, a Seoul court has granted the two cash-strapped companies 1 month to seek debt restructuring on their own. What caused the payment crisis? How will the restructuring and court proceedings unfold? And what lessons does Korea need to learn from this? On today's Within the Frame, we take a deep dive into the TMON and WeMakePrice crisis with Professor Kim Yong-Jin of Sogang Business School, who joins us via Skype. It's always great to have you with us.
Good evening.
Also with us tonight is Kim Sei-wan, professor of economics at Ewha Womans University. Always great to see you.
Thank you for having me today.
All right, Professor Yong-Jin, let's start off with you. First, give us a rough estimate of the financial damage caused by the snowballing liquidity crisis of TMON and WeMakePrice.
Right, it's really like a snowballing crisis, right? According to the Korean government, I'll be a little bit conservative. Delayed sales payment from online shopping platforms TMON and WeMakePrice will surpass 800 billion won. That's around 853 million US dollars. The current overdue payment amount is about 210 billion won. That's about 153 million US dollars. But it will be at least 800 billion won after transactions between June and July are included. This amount makes sense to me, considering pre-settlement loans by banks to sellers are about 1.2 trillion won last month. Pre-settlement loans allow sellers on e-commerce platforms to receive their sales proceeds in advance from the bank, which collect the settlement fund on the settlement date.
The government announced a set of measures today to support customers and sellers affected by the crisis, which include completing refunds for customers who bought general products through TMON and WeMakePrice by this week. And we'll discuss more in detail about today's announcement. But before that, Professor Yong-Jin, the travel industry was the hardest hit by the liquidity crisis. What's behind this?
First of all, I feel very sorry for consumers who purchase travel package product, to lose the opportunity to enjoy the summer vacation and suffer this trouble. There are basically two factors which made TMON and WeMakePrice sell the travel package product the most, with lots of promotions, which caused the hardest liquidity crisis to the travel industry. Firstly, the payment volume of the travel package product per transaction is relatively larger than that of any other product sales. In particular, people are used to go on travel with family or friend, which makes the payment volume per transaction larger. Secondly, the settlement due for travel package product is very beneficial to the shopping platforms. And for the case of product sales, the merchant will get settlement money from the platform about 2 months later after sales. However, in the case of the travel package product, the sales date starts at the day the consumer actually go on the travel, not the day of the payment or contract for the travel. The platforms, can hold the money from the customers, actually the payment date to the settlement date. If the consumer, make the contract earlier, the platform can use the money longer period of time. This is why the platform, put lots of effort on sales of travel package product.
So a couple of factors were at play, and one of them is the two companies' aggressive promotions of summer vacation package items. As you mentioned, a lot of customers were frustrated, to say the least, as the crisis erupted during the peak vacation season. And it appears TMON and WeMakePrice, they both took advantage of the payment periods as well. Now, Professor Sei-wan, analyses are pouring in on the causes of the massive liquidity crisis, and it appears there's more than one culprit that led to the solvency crisis. Could you elaborate for us what went wrong?
One of the most fundamental reasons for liquidity crisis would be 10Q's, which is the mother company of TMON and WeMakePrice, overexpansion of business by merging other e-commerce firms. Basically, they bite more than they can chew. In last 2 years, Q10 has expanded by acquiring 5 domestic and international platforms. For example, in September 2022, Q10 acquired TMON, followed by Interpark Commerce and WeMakePrice last year. This year, they also acquired the U.S. shopping platform Wish, and through its subsidiary Interpark Commerce, also purchased AK Mall, the online shopping mall of Arirang Group. However, the general view on Q10's aggressive expansion by acquiring unprofitable companies has ultimately led to a liquidity crisis. The financial conditions of TMON and WeMakePrice, which were already accumulating losses before their acquisition, and the two firms' financial situation became even more dangerous under the acquisition by Q10. So in these circumstances, actually there is a speculation that Q10 may have caused the delay in settlement by using the funds paid by customers for operations before dispersing them to the sellers.
So Q10's aggressive business expansion, as you mentioned, biting more than they can chew, and also lack of proper regulations also seem to be one of the main culprits. It's quite disturbing to know that financial authorities were aware of the parent group's financial risks from years before, but they failed to address the problem due to regulation blind spots. And staying with you, Professor Kim, a Seoul court has approved the Autonomous Restructuring Support Program, or the ARS program, for TMON and WeMakePrice. What exactly is the program, and how is it different from a court receivership?
The ARS program, which is Autonomous Restructuring Support Program, is a system supported by the court to facilitate voluntary restructuring negotiations between debtors and creditors before a rehabilitation procedure is initiated. So if this ARS fails, the court goes to a resolving program. The purpose of ARS program is resolving dispute quickly and amicably and at the minimal cost. Last week, CEOs of TMON and WeMakePrice both asked ARS, and the court accepted it. The court has decided to give 1 month until the second of next month, September, for voluntary negotiations between the company and the creditors. During this period, rehabilitation procedure will be suspended. If necessary, the suspension period can be extended up to 3 months. So if agreement is not reached, the mandatory initiation of the rehabilitation procedure or receivership begins by court. But I think it should be noted that the vast scale of the creditors and the complex web of the interest involved are expected to make the negotiation process quite challenging, and therefore the payment to the creditors can be delayed without any result of negotiations for 3 months.
Professor Yong-Jin, as Professor Kim pointed out, the two troubled e-commerce platforms, TMON and WeMakePrice, have about 1 month to strike a deal with creditors. What are your prospects for the ARS procedures going forward?
Well, before we proceed with this question, I want to add one point to Professor Sei-wan. The most important problem of this crisis would be the huge loss of this company. I mean, the fierce competition in Korean e-commerce market would cause big losses to both TMON and WeMakePrice. So that is one of the biggest problem, the very fundamental problem. Okay, then with the ALS procedures, how it going? In general, it will be I think almost impossible to make a deal in its current form. There are several success cases which apply the ARS program. In those cases, the number of creditors were less than 10, and most creditors were financial companies, which could initiate the ALS processes because they have resources, they have skills. How could any company make a deal with 110,000 creditors? I believe there is only one way to make these ARS procedures go smoothly. According to the law, payment gateway companies are obliged to refund to consumers who paid through the company. If they refund most of the delayed payment, there will be the co-creditors to these two platforms. So the two companies think of payment gateway companies as creditors and ask them to convert their credit to capital. Then the platform companies will deal with less number of creditors than 110,000 creditors. Or within a month, they can find investors to make up the lagged fund, but which looks a very hard deal to make to me.
So during the 1 month period, the companies will seek voluntary negotiations with their creditors to reschedule payments, and this while the court suspends its decision on whether to place them under a court-led debt restructuring. But as you mentioned, it will be extremely challenging to strike a deal with thousands of creditors. Professor Sei-wan, after vowing to inject more than 560 billion won, or roughly $412 million, to facilitate cash flow, the government today has announced a new set of guidelines to prevent the recurrence of similar e-commerce insolvencies. Walk us through the key points, and do you think they would be effective?
Well, first of all, I'm glad that Korean government finally recognized the importance of the new regulation on e-commerce. The key point of the new e-commerce guideline is on the reduction of settlement period. Korean government sees that one major reason for TMON and WeMakePrice crisis is on too long settlement period. TMON and WeMakePrice settlement periods are about 2 months, while other e-commerce platforms like Naver and Gmarket pay in the next day of the purchase. So all e-commerce companies will be required to manage sales proceeds separately, and the settlement period will be also be shortened. Korean government and ruling party decided to enforce the general product providers affected by situation would be refunded completely by the end of this week. Government will finance 560 billion won for this refund.
So mandating e-commerce platforms to separately manage payments for vendors and also shortening the deadlines of payments were also included, according to reports. And these are some of the key points outlined by the government today. Professor Yong-Jin, how would the TMON and WeMakePrice crisis reshape the landscape of Korea's competitive e-commerce industry?
Basically, after this crisis, the phenomenon, the richer gets rich, the poor gets poorer, will be going on in the e-commerce market in Korea. Recently, number one e-commerce site, Coupang, actually dominate the market, and the 11th Street and the Gmarket are gaining momentum after TMON and WeMakePrice overdue payment. Customers who lose trust, this e-commerce, the most important factor in e-commerce is customer trust, right? So customers who lose trust in under two companies will move quickly to other big e-commerce players. Matter of course, other e-commerce companies, including Lotte-on and SSG.com, will be a beneficiary. In addition, Chinese e-commerce companies like Alibaba and Temu would have another momentum to penetrate Korean market further. The number of active, customers of Alibaba and Temu has been growing very, very fast. The liquidity, crisis caused by TMON and WeMakePrice will allow both sellers and customers to move to the Chinese companies due to their size. They are very big, and they have excellent system to secure the transactions.
So the richer will get richer and the poorer will get poorer. That's not
Right.
a desired way of competition in a free market economy. So perhaps we may need more regulation, more government support to address that issue as well going forward. Professor Se-wan, now switching gears to stock markets, because this is important. South Korean markets marked its worst session since the global financial crisis of 2008 on Monday, with circuit breakers activated for the first time in 4 years. But today we saw another sidecar trading halt shortly after the market opened due to a rapid surge as Kospi rebounded to previous levels to close at 25.22. How do you see this?
Well, I believe that domestic stock market is much dominated by thin psychology of investors these days. So market volatility increase is accelerated even with small news. Last Friday, Kospi dropped by 3.5%, and then it further decreased by 8.8% yesterday. The accumulated return over 2 trading days is 12.5%, which is one of the largest drop in history. After 2 days drops, domestic markets, Kospi rebounded by 3.3% today against yesterday's drop. Quite a few negative factors are overlapped in domestic equity market, like worsened employment in the United States, escalating geopolitical tension in Middle East, bubbles in AI stocks like in NVIDIA's, and Bank of Japan's base rate increase. But even with these all negative factors, we shouldn't have this much drop in equity market because market is facing near interest rate cut by Bank of Korea. These huge ups and downs of stock market reflects investors' super sensitive psychology without direction. I believe that when U.S. Fed cuts its base rate in September, and then when Bank of Korea cuts its base rate in October, domestic market will be more stabilized.
And Dr. Yong-Jin, Wall Street also suffered its worst day in almost 2 years on Monday, with leading share indices like the S&P 500 and Dow Jones Industrial Average tumbling in volatile trading. Is the U.S. really heading for a recession because those volatility was mainly stemming from U.S. recession fears?
Well, I don't think the U.S. economy is heading for a recession at the moment, even though we see, several bad news like a slowdown in hiring and consumer spending and weak report on manufacturing and construction. The U.S. economy has accelerated this year. The U.S. GDP growth, jumped to 2.8% in the second quarter, which exceeded the past forecast. A recession is typically marked by 2 consecutive quarters of negative GDP. Even though July's job report was disappointing, it may reflect just 1 month's data, and the depressed hiring figures in July could have also been impacted by Hurricane Beryl. The tumbling stock prices may be caused by several factors rather than the economic recession itself. Firstly, Bank of Japan increased the base interest rate to make the Japanese yen stronger. So yen carry investment will be expensive, and then the loaners, will sell stock to repay their loans. Secondly, stock market, trading is now affected by algorithm trading. This is one of the most important factors. Computers trade computers trade, based on specific rules and algorithms so that it could increase the volatility. Thirdly, I think, this is one of the important factors. The high expectation of investors on AI investment could not be met. The disappointment about the performance of AI companies and may cause a weak market. So we may have to really think deep, that recession will really come. It's separate from the expectations of interest rate cut.
So investors, they don't need to be overly concerned about a potential U.S. recession, but still it feels like we're facing uncertainties on top of uncertainties, so we'll be sure to closely monitor how things develop from here on out. Thank you so much, Professor Yong-Jin, for your perspectives.
Thank you for having me.
And many thanks to you as well, as always, Professor Sei-wan, for your valuable insights.
Thank you very much.
And that brings us to the end of this show. Thank you for watching, and be sure to tune in same time tomorrow to join our conversation. Goodbye for now.